Athletes, take your mark. Get set. It's time for the Addict to Athlete podcast. Everybody out there, Coach Blu Robinson here. Hey, I want to thank you all so much for downloading, sharing, and subscribing to the podcast. Dang, we greatly appreciate you guys doing so. As always, jump on addictoathlete.org. You'll find all of our backlog podcasts, information about the team, how to start a chapter by becoming a certified Addict to Athlete coach in your community, and so much more. Jump on our team's website. You can jump on and get yourself ready for the upcoming summer events that hopefully you'll be participating in. And athletes, you'll also be able to exclusively be connected to our Circles group. Our Circles group is our new social media platform that gets away from all the craziness that is social media and the mind melt that it can become. So we've moved our program over to the Circles platform, which is kind of like a big huddle of everybody on Team Addict Athlete. We'll be broadcasting live. We'll be having all kinds of interactions over there. A link will be provided for this on the podcast show notes. So jump on there, become part of the circle. Let's huddle up and kickstart your recovery. Well, athletes, I guess the treat is yours, or maybe, I should say you're in for something you probably weren't expecting, which is just Coach Blu here in the Addict to Athlete studio here at home base. And the reason why is because I wanted to take just a moment. We've got some neat guests on the horizon, but I wanted to take a moment and get back to some roots. The roots specifically about me being able to coach and to give you some knowledge and some thinking points and maybe help land a little bit on this crazy platform we call life. And what I mean by that is I want to take a deep dive into a principle that I've been working with several of my private clients on. And that is their emotional intelligence. Okay, you're like, well, it'd be a boring podcast. I'm going to speed through this one or maybe save it for another day. But I would hope that you don't. And I hope you keep this one kind of at the ready, because as we get into some of the nuances that is emotional intelligence, you'll probably have some awakenings and hopefully be able to see maybe why you specifically in addiction recovery, mental health, overcoming issues has a knack for the ability to help other people in similar situations. And that's the cool thing about what emotional intelligence has become in our lives. I've noticed this, that most folks that I work with have this innate ability to connect with other people. And I believe it's because our hearts are way too big. I think people that struggle with addictions, our hearts are way too big. Now, you get someone that doesn't struggle with addictions and they look at that and they think, oh, baloney, they're self-centered, they're conceited, they're thieves, they're cheats, they're all these bad things. But I beg to differ. And the reason why I beg to differ is because I've seen this time in and time out, myself included. And that is, for some reason, we have this ability to take on life. I mean that kind of like figuratively and generally in both manners. And the reason why is because we have somehow, some way, shape, or form experienced some pretty significant setbacks in life, whether that be trauma, divorce, you name it, we've experienced it. And what I noticed is that some period of our time in life, we were able to develop this ability to forecast, what's coming. And I mean that because your emotional intelligence has begun to increase to the point by which you see it, you feel it, you empathize with the other person. And what do we do? Because we don't know how to navigate around those problems and situations. We say, hey, give me your pain, give me your trauma. I'll listen, I'll take it. You don't have to. And what happens eventually is as we do that with our friends and our family and the situations we find ourselves in, eventually there's no room for us to carry our own baggage, our own emotional currency, and we end up taking the knee, whether that's through drug use, whether that's through increase in mental health issues, things of that nature. But I think if people peeled back the layers a little bit and started to realize the significance of what someone in addiction truly feels and experiences, they'd probably have a different opinion on that person's heart. And I believe it's too big. I believe that people in addiction, we feel pain very differently than most people. And I'm not saying that, the people that don't use or whatnot can't feel it. But what I'm saying is for some reason, we have taken it upon ourselves to lighten the burden of so many others that we sacrifice our own emotional safety and our own emotional concerns for theirs. And so emotional intelligence plays a huge role in this. So let's jump into it. Emotional intelligence, sometimes you'll hear it as explained as an EQ or EI. But what it refers to is the ability to recognize and understand and manage and influence your emotions within yourself and through others. And it kind of involves a set of skills that help individuals navigate social complexities, right? Making thoughtful decisions. Maybe you can build, strong relationships. But here's the breakdown of some key points of emotional intelligence, okay? The first of which And I'm prefacing this, you guys, not with I want to make you all into little piles of emotional goo. What I'm saying is if you can control and understand your emotions and you can increase your emotional intelligence, there is nothing that will stand in your way for your recovery, for relationships, for interactions with people you disagree with. This is something that I've been able to kind of hone and pride myself in, is being able to be a safe person for people to be upset with, because I don't allow their urgency to become my urgency. And that can piss some people off, and it can make other people feel very comfortable in being able to share with me maybe the things that are going on inside their heart. What I mean by that is if someone attacks me, I'm not going to go out there and verbally or physically destroy them. What I'm going to say is, well, okay, I'm choosing to withdraw my relationship with you, but I'll be here when you're ready. But I understand where you're coming from. It's like the current political climate, right? There are people on one side that believe a certain way and me on another side that believe a certain way. And even though people come at me and say, you're wrong and you're stupid and you're this, that's fine by me, because my beliefs are my beliefs, and that's fine. It's okay. You can have different beliefs, but I'm not going to engage in stupid, superficial debates, especially online. I don't mind putting a thought out there, but if you really want to have a conversation, come talk to me personally, one-on-one. And this is where emotional intelligence comes in, because people are afraid of that these days. They're afraid of that because they don't like the confrontation. But it doesn't have to be a confrontation. It can be a conversation. So the nuances that come along with, I think, emotional intelligence and the breakdown of the key components, first and foremost, is your self-awareness. So you got to recognize and understand your own emotions and how they affect your thoughts and your behaviors and your decisions. Because being aware of your strengths and your weaknesses and emotional triggers are going to be able to help you engage in whatever conversation you have to have, the good, the bad, and maybe even the ugly. Now, your self-awareness also kind of shows your limitations on what you're able to bring to the conversation or the confrontation. And what I mean by that is, again, not to make this a political podcast, but to talk about politics. A lot of people use I've done my research. Well, no, you haven't. What you've done is divided your attention into one path, and that's what you've gained. And that's fine, but that's not research. That's kind of awareness. That's perspective. Now, truly, if we wanted to understand, why tariffs work or don't work, you're going to have to go into some very deep research. I'm talking about both sides of an issue, and most people don't want to do that. Self-awareness is the understanding that in order to have a conversation, you're going to have to do those kind of things. It's also being able to excuse some of your emotional thresholds to be able to be willing to hear the other side of a conversation so that you don't lose yourself in anger or frustration, because that's where most people lose their marbles, is when they get so passionate about something that they refuse to allow themselves to see another perspective. And that's totally crazy when you ask me. I mean, it's funny. I remember years ago, and again, politics, when I think it was Mitt Romney was running or something, and he had a change in his views on a policy, and people were calling him a flip-flopper. I kind of like that, because that means that he saw something that he's like, maybe I was wrong about this. And his self-awareness was so, I guess, present that he's like, this is going to be different. But yet other people come out of the woods and say, you're a flip-flopper. So the crazy thing about this is once we try and establish ourselves as having deep roots in something, we kind of limit our mindset. It becomes a closed mindset. What we want to do in order to cultivate your emotional intelligence is to have a growth mindset. There could be things that I don't see or understand yet that's going on in our political world that I may agree with later. And the last thing I'd want is someone Tarzaning into my world and being like, hey, you're a flip-flopper. Look at you, you big dork. When usually the reason they're trying to force this stuff on you is because they want you to change your opinion or your thoughts. And then when you do so, they're like, not as strong as you thought you were. They double down on it. Your self-awareness means that you are very much aware of your strengths, of your weaknesses, and your emotional triggers. And those emotional triggers we're going to talk about a little bit later. The second key component to emotional intelligence is your self-regulation. Right? This is managing and controlling your emotions in very healthy ways, specifically in challenging situations. This means that you're not going to allow anything or anyone to offend you. And that's a lot harder than you think it is, because it means that you have to see it from their perspective. right? And I've noticed things when people get very passionate about a certain topic or an information that they've gathered on whatever topic, that they get very emotional with it. And I have done my best in my career and in my life to separate my emotions from my thoughts. You've heard me talk about this a million times, but it's worth repeating here. And that is that your emotions and your thoughts are two very different things, right? Emotions are feelings. They're things that can be described with literally one, and anything that's beyond a one word response is no longer a feeling, that becomes a thought. Now, the problem with this is that through self-regulation, you have to understand the difference between your thoughts and your feelings. But if I say I feel as though the reasons the pharmaceutical companies aren't being held accountable is because they're all in the pockets of the senators and the presidents and all this kind of stuff, well, that's not a feeling. Where's the feeling in that? The feeling lies in the disappointed, hurt, concerned, devastated. Those are feelings. What I just dissertated there was a thought. But here's the catch, right? With self-regulation and managing your emotions in healthy ways, if I say something like, I think that the pharmaceutical companies are X, Y, and Z, if you think differently, now we're in a debate, and debate is a conflict, and I don't like conflict. And so if I use the word feeling, it's game on. You cannot rebut against me. But self-regulation, being able to stay calm under pressure, avoiding the impulsive reactions, right? And adapting those changes in those circumstances to the situation at hand are so vitally crucial. Self-regulation is an art. And what it means is that not allowing yourself to be offended means that you're seeing it from their perspective as well. And I see this a lot in my clients and people I associate with, and that is when they are very staunch on a situation. Let's say it's MAT, medicated assisted therapy. People have such a powerful mindset that it's wrong. You can't treat medicine. Well, then we're going to have a hard time. And when I've seen things and been personally a part of seeing the successes of it, if I didn't allow them from their perspective to speak their mind, then I can get into a debate which would possibly hurt the relationship. So self-regulation and staying calm under pressure means that the words they're using, the things that they're trying to throw at you, simply boils down to what's called control talk, which has two subcategories, right? Fight and spite. If I'm picking a fight with you, I'm coming right at you. Well, you don't know this, and you didn't research that, and you don't watch this news organizations, or you've never had someone in a situation that's done this, and they're fighting with me. The other subcategory of control talk is spite, which so many of us really, I think, are victims of, and probably, producers of. And that is where we poke and poke and poke the bear until it bites, and then we ask the bear, "Why'd you bite me?" So spite talk looks like, well, you must have done all your research because you know much better than the professionals who get paid, instrumental amounts of money to know this stuff. Or, well, look at you because you have a degree on the wall. You think you're all high and mighty, right? And you must be because I don't have a degree, but you know what? You're the guy who has the license, so you must know everything. The spite talk is kind of a crazy thing because then it attempts to relieve the person who's giving it to you from responsibility. So being able to self-regulate with an emotional intelligent mindset means that you're going to avoid impulsive reactions, meaning like you're not just going to react. If someone says something cocky to you, you're not just going to boom, react. You're going to allow situations to change. You're going to understand that their urgency is not your urgency. Now, the third component and key to emotional intelligence is a rough one. And I've thought about this deeply for a long, long time. Is this learned? Is this an innate trait? Or is this something that, I guess can be increased over time? And that is empathy. Whenever I hear someone say, well, I'm an empath, so, X, Y, and Z, I think you're not an empath then. Because empaths don't know that. They don't say that kind of stuff. That's a narcissist, right? Empathy is understanding and sharing feelings to others and sharing feelings with others without them understanding or knowing that you're doing it either. It's the ability to feel something on a very deep level because the feeling exists. Being able to identify it and bring it in. The problem with empathy on that level, though, is that most of us do it in silence. And so we'll be feeling something very deep while someone else is feeling something maybe barely shallow, and we'll take it with us. This is why I think so many people in addiction struggle. And they struggle because when you look at the complexities of empathy, a lot of time that empathy evolves into emotional pain and hurt and loss and grief. And those are all great fuel for a mighty fine addiction if you think about it, right? And so understanding and sharing the feelings of others with an empathetic mindset is definitely a ground level foundational aspect of emotional intelligence. Being able to see things from another person's perspective is sometimes very challenging and hard, but it makes perfect sense. And then being able to respond to them with compassion is even more difficult. I've done this so many times with people that have messaged me or emailed me who have been, you weren't there for me, coach, and you were going to do this and you hadn't. And, and I'm like, all right, I got to see it from their perspective. They don't see it from my perspective. They don't see that, the situations that arose were such that I chose to be here instead of there, or, I'm only one person, a coach of a team of thousands with hundreds of folks in individual therapy, not alone my family and everybody else. But to them, it's me and them. And so when they have those feelings, right, and they're sharing that with me either through the control talk, fight or fight, I'm able to see it from their perspective. And empathy we're going to get deeper into here a little bit, but I need to know it's a key component to emotional intelligence. The fourth key aspect of this is your social skills. And this is where I think we're starting to struggle as a society. Building and maintaining healthy relationships through effective communication, which we've talked about just with the control talk, and we'll talk about more later. Conflict resolution, which I'm a huge fan of. Collaboration, meaning like being able to not compromise with each other, but to resolve the issues, to really get into the conflict resolution. And then inspiring and influencing others on a positive note. Because even when people have been at their wits' end with me and you show them love and compassion, you're inspiring and influencing them to realize that I'm a safe person to be upset with and be mad at. And that takes a lot of emotional courage, you guys. Your social skills, I think all of our social skills, I should say, took a hit during COVID with the push to get people away from each other, the social distancing, right? Social skills and social distancing didn't really connect. And what I realized is that I don't think we've fully recovered as a society. And there's small things that I notice that on a social skill level might take us decades to get back. Something as simple as, let's say, the flow in the direction at a grocery store. Have you guys noticed this? That for some reason, and I don't know if this has happened before COVID, I just noticed it after, that the flow and the emotional awareness is kind of off a little bit. And so you'll have someone that leaves their cart in the middle of the aisle and they'll try to get something and then they'll be reading the label and you're like, excuse me. And then you try to brush past them and you'll just barely kind of rub their cart and they grab it and pull it away. Or the flow is off and so they take a corner too tight and they ram into you. Or like you'll be, if you guys notice this, like you'll be the one that will say, oh, I'm so sorry first, when they were the ones that were probably out of line, so to speak. Well, the social skills, I think, took a hit because we all went in. And we all went in instead of staying out. We forgot a little bit about some of the skill set that it takes about being able to build and maintain healthy social relationships through conflict resolution, which means own your own, which means being able to be empathetic that person might have something on their plate. There is a TikTok that I saw, or some Instagram reel I saw, that was this young man who was interviewing another young man, and this guy kind of walked through them. And in fact, I'm going to probably slice that interview in with this right now. But basically, what it was is this kid kind of walks through this. He's like doing an interview face to face, and some guy walks right through their shot. And he's like, the guy interviewing the young man says, man, it's like he didn't even realize we were doing an interview. And the guy starts his I guess, dialogue with, well, people are people. And people are kind of going through their own thing. And he says something to the tune of, don't ever look at something as malice when it's probably just absent-mindedness. I'm going to play that right now for you.
People are just walking in front of it like we're not recording.
Hey, it happens. People are people. None of it's intentional. Never attribute to malice what can be attributed to incompetence. It's far more likely that they're all in their own worlds, doing their own thing. They're not paying attention to the world around them. And we all do it every day, whether you're driving, walking down the street. All of our lives are just as complex as everybody else's. Everything you have going on, they have going on. Nobody knows what everybody else is going through. We also need to be a little more self-aware and aware of the world around us.
That was deep.
You gotta look deep to find the deep things. If all you ever do in your life is stay at the surface, you'll never find anything worth exploring.
Are you real?
I try to be.
Yeah. So can you tell a little bit about how he utilizes that, I guess, emotional understanding and the social skills through that experience? Like, hey, we're all going through our own stuff. And, the incompetent ability that we have, all of us share collectively. The fifth key to emotional intelligence is your motivation. Now, being driven by these internal goals and values rather than the external rewards is a crucial, I think, foundational aspect of emotional intelligence. So staying committed to long-term objectives and maintaining a positive and resilient mindset is kind of difficult, but your motivation is a key factor in your emotional intelligence. Because what's motivating you to get so passionate about whatever it is you're wanting to push onto someone else, right? If you're angry at society, if you're angry at the police, if you're angry at, your family or whatever, that's your motivation. But what's behind that? If your motivations are askew, and even if you think you're valid, because there are things I know that I believe in that other people don't, that I'm like, this is a personal belief. And my motivation isn't to rub your nose in it and to make you see the way I see. It's worked for me. If you want to know more about it, let me know. So if you think about the motivation it takes, okay, like a lot of people who are in the political climate right now, they're motivated by fear. They're motivated by worry and concern. And even though they're doing some radical things that I'm thinking, man, that is not the way I would choose to do it, I can understand why they do. And it's a hard one because you're not going to convince them that what they're seeing or what they're feeling or experiencing is askew. Marissa and I just listened to an episode of This American Life, and it was about a father, son, and a family system that the father had become so conspiracy theorized, whatever, it doesn't even a word, on like the political climate that it literally tore his family apart. And he lost everything. He lost his family. He lost his home. He lost everything because he was so indoctrinated with this fear mongering that, the government was going to induce martial law and that political figures would be held accountable by going to jail and prison, which we know is never going to happen to anybody or anyone. But the sad part about it was like what it did. The motivation this father had to share this doom and gloom with his family was because he was afraid. The motivation they had to try and push dad into seeing things from their perspective is that they were worried they're going to lose him. And they both were right. And so I think it's kind of blowhardy to even believe that like something I post on Facebook or something that I push in a social narrative is ever going to influence somebody to be like, well, I'm going to climb down off this mountain I've been defending for years and come over to yours. People, we got to get that out of our head. That's not what this is about. If your motivation is to get someone to change perspective just so that you can bring them into your fold, whether that's religion, whether that's politics, whether that's, turf guarding, your job, whatever it is, you're doing it wrong. Because being able to be an example for them to see, I wonder what's going on over there. I'm going to go take a look. That's the real key. But posting stuff online saying that, political this or legal that, like no one's going to be like, oh my gosh, I never thought of it that way. I'm coming over to your house. Like I remember, early on when I joined the church, it was kind of an interesting thing. I saw people protesting the church and I'm like, man, that's kind of crazy. Like they're shoving people, like pictures of fetuses and stuff in my face. And I'm like, that seems like the wrong thing. Like you're screaming at me. I'm not going to be like, oh my gosh, this guy's yelling at me and he's shoving this in my face. Dude, he must be right. So give me a sign. I'm going to join you. No, you can't do it that way. You've got to be more inviting. You've got to be able to like see things from someone else's perspective and offer a point of view that kind of stimulates thinking. It's kind of hard, but like most people want instant change and instant gratification, but they're not willing to allow someone to choose for themselves. It's never going to work. In fact, if you do that, kind of a blowhard. That being said, key foundation of emotional intelligence is it improves relationships. Your emotional intelligence helps you connect with others on a level that is deeper than a surface issue. our relationship should be deeper than what the political climate is, that whatever the legal issues are, from what human to human is. Our relationships should be deeper than a Facebook post or a Twitter post. We want to be able to have these experiences together, and understand that these matter for a reason. So I guess we should jump into that. Why does emotional intelligence even matter? Like, sounds like a hippie thing to me, right? Like what do we call that? Like a liberal thing, right? No, emotional intelligence isn't a political thing at all. It enhances your decision making, right? It allows you to manage your emotions, which is super important in a political climate, in an emotional climate, in a family climate. It kind of helps you think clearly in stressful situations. It absolutely will boost your leadership skills, because emotional intelligent leaders inspire other people. It fosters collaboration, right? And that's kind of what we want. We want a spot at the table. We want to be able to commune about this kind of stuff, be able to talk about these kind of things. It creates, very positive work environments because people feel the message of what you're moving. It promotes personal growth, which I think is key and vital to this whole existence, right? Because it encourages self-reflection, something that I've had to do myself. There were things that I believed that were my own beliefs, and I need you guys to know that no belief is right and no belief is wrong. It just is. And that freaking sucks when you think about it, because beliefs make us do some pretty crazy things, right? Beliefs make us, like start wars. Beliefs make us fly planes into buildings. Beliefs make us do a lot of crazy things. And the hard part about it is they're not right and they're not wrong. They just are. And that's what's hard to swallow. But it absolutely promotes that self-reflection and that resilience and that desire to continue learning. I don't know everything, believe it or not. There are things that when people say, you got to go research, there are some things that I'm not going to research because I don't really have the emotional capacity to do that. I don't want to. But there are other things that I find very sacred to myself or very unique or special. I'm like, I want to learn more about that. And specifically people. That's why I love these podcasts, is being able to dive in. If you've ever listened to an Addict podcast, you know that we don't get too deep into their negative story, because I don't care about that. I know how they got there. What I want to know is the resiliency. How did you get out of that? How did you find the strength and the perseverance, right? And so, it begs the question then, as we kind of hone in on this, that is emotional intelligence, is it a trait that you're just born with? Or can it be learned? This is a classic, if you've ever been in psychology classes, this is a classic nature versus nurture question. Now, emotional intelligence is a skill that can be developed over time and through practice. I wholeheartedly believe that. Through self-reflection and learning from the experiences, it plays a very crucial role in both your personal and professional lifestyles. And you guys understand that. But having a high emotional intelligence in combination with, I guess, the question of, is it learned or is it a trait that you're born with? It does break some debates, but I think here's the breakdown. An internal trait, the nature part of this. Some people believe that some individuals are naturally more in tune with emotions, both on their own and in others. And that's kind of due to their own personality and temperament. And we've seen people like this before, right? We see people that just seem to be calm under pressure. It's kind of be unconditionally loving. For example, people who are naturally empathetic or introspective may find it easier to develop certain aspects of emotional intelligence. And certainly genetics and early childhood experiences play a role into that. But I have to tell you, there are situations where I've met with people that have had very turbulent childhoods that have every right to be a person who rages against the machine, and they don't. They love and they serve and they are compassionate. I've seen other people that have been born with, the silver spoon in their mouth, and they are the most horrible, horrific, mean-spirited people. And vice versa, right? I mean, it plays on both sides. So although I do believe it does play a role to it, I think there's some other aspects to this on a learned level, though, right? On a nurturing, meaning like the tangible part. Self-awareness can be developed through practices like mindfulness and journaling and getting thoughts out and kind of inspecting kind of where these thoughts and these mindsets come from, questioning yourself, or even going to therapy. Self-regulation can be learned by identifying the emotional triggers that we talked about, being able to practice techniques like deep breathing and meditation and pausing to reflect. Empathy can be improved by actively listening, seeking to understand others' perspectives, and being, being and maybe practicing some compassion. Just to see some sadness that could exist. A lot of times we don't want to do that because we think we have to fill that void somehow. And if we don't have the capacity to do that, we feel like it's our fault. We don't want to do that. Social skills can be increased on a tangible level, right? Meaning, like, how about you enhance your practice in communication, your conflict resolution, and building and maintaining relationships. And then, of course, your motivation can be learned by, cultivating and setting meaningful goals and being able to focus on the internal rewards, not the external reward. So I do believe it can be learned. I don't think this is something that's just like you're born with it or you don't have it. I do believe it can be learned if you're willing to allow yourself to take down some of the wall, right? So there are signs of emotional intelligence you can see in others, and I want you guys to be maybe aware of some of these things. If you're aware of someone else's emotional capacity and being able to invest in some of the things that they're doing, like listening. Listening is a beautiful, emotionally intelligent, I think, principle. Listening is not as easy as we think because most of us get into that reactive listening style. If you're being controlled talks, right? We talked about this a minute ago. And you're feeling like you're being attacked and someone's fighting with you, or you get that feeling, that burn, that like you're being mocked or ridiculed or egged on, that you're being spoken to, right? You will absolutely be in reactive listening style, which means that you are ready to rebut so quick. It doesn't matter what they're saying, you're just pissed and you're going to show them how mad you are, and then you retaliate. So if we get into a control talk, reactive listening cycle, it's game over for that relationship. It will not work, right? And so being able to manage and understand that if I'm getting hot under the collar, I'm getting bugged, this isn't about them. This isn't about things they're saying. This is about how I'm responding to it. Now, I can be very passionate and very bold with my belief system. I really can. But I'm also going to come at you at an angle and say, these are my beliefs. These are my thoughts. And here's a few of my feelings. Take it or leave it. And people say, well, those are all stupid and you're an idiot. Like, maybe so. But they're mine, and that's okay. Most people, when you take away that steam because you start getting into a very different listening style, which we'll talk about on another podcast, maybe again, remind you guys of the 4 styles of communication. People don't keep fighting with you because they realize they're not gaining any traction. The emotional intelligence that you've created doesn't allow you to be offended by what they're saying because you seriously see what's happening. They're arguing and fighting and spite talking you, and you're reactively listening. If you move your reactive listening into a reflective listening, what is he really trying to say to me? What's really going on here? What's this person really going through? What's the real message behind this? And you start seeing some of the golden thread. You start being like, they're so overly passionate about this, and they're saying these vicious things to me because they're afraid. Or maybe because they're concerned, or maybe they're worried, or maybe they don't know, and so they're kind of confused. But if I come back at them with, well, you're just a big idiot too, and you listen to all that, and you're part of this conspiracy, like, it's game over. Like, you guys won't have any traction. And so being able to develop those attributes is not easy. There is an absolute dark side to emotional intelligence as well, because you could also be manipulated and, lead with some inauthentic, pursuits. So you've got to use your emotional intelligence to empower, not to control. You've got to ask yourself, are you influencing someone's decision-making to benefit you? Like, are you kind of like, again, spite talking them into making a decision that you want? Oh, well, you always said you would help me with this and you just never will. You got to be careful with that. You got to ask yourself, am I really influencing them to have some independent thought, or am I trying to still set them into doing what I want them to do? I think that you have to be transparent in your intentions, which means to avoid any hidden agendas. Your relationship can maybe sense when it feels off, like you're being a little bit too emotional right now, or you're being a little bit too invested in what this is about. So you got to communicate openly and honestly. There's got to be some search talk going on. So you got to check your motivations, guys. This isn't an easy thing to do. And remember, like, I think the great Stan Lee once said, and I love it when people say that, like, you know, like when they sprinkle this little like statement into their own repertoire as they're giving you something. With great power comes great responsibility. That is so very true with emotional intelligence and core communication, right? Because you can use core communication and emotional intelligence to absolutely destroy the relationship you're in. So you got to be very careful. So as we kind of, you know, get ready to wrap this up, maybe some of you guys who are still here are like, oh, bloody hell, Blue, blow hard. Come on. I wanted to tell you how to boost your emotional intelligence if you feel like you want to increase your awareness of it. And that is to practice as much as you can self-awareness by checking into your emotions, understanding why they're affecting your thoughts and your behaviors. This is a big one. Okay, you got to take a deep breath and kind of be like, okay, this person said something to me that really hit me the wrong way. Why? I know for me, it's typically because I come at it, I'm thinking, why would this person who I truly believe we had a relationship with come at me like this? Like, this is strange. Like, you know, like, where's this aggression coming from? And so I'm hurt. And if I responded as a hurt person, it could go very wrong. So I've got to kind of like, you know, practice my own self-awareness. Like, okay, why is this hurt? And then it puts me back in the perception of this is their thought, their opinion. And I'm not going to ridicule them or try to, you know, shove them down to a level that, you know, shows them how emotionally intelligent I am or how intelligent I am. I'm not going to do that. You've got to be willing and practice on managing your own emotions. You've got to be able to identify those triggers. There are triggers in my life that people have crossed. And instead of coming at them full force, I choose, and this is one of my character flaws, I choose to distance. Now, coming from a perspective that I have to be able to emotionally distance myself, I have two things going for me. First is my ADHD, because I have face blindness. And if you're not here in front of me, I kind of forget you're alive. And that sucks when you think about it. And what I mean by that is, you know, I didn't recognize how powerful this was until my daughter Savannah went on, you know, a skirmish down to Southern Utah to attend college. And going from day-to-day conversation and connectivity with her, because, you know, I see her at breakfast, I see her in the evening, you know, like I'm very aware to the point where, you know, yeah, she's down there. And it's not that I don't love her, that I don't care about her. It's because my ADHD is like, well, she's not here, so she's fine. And I remember I went almost 2 weeks without talking to her. I'm like, oh my gosh, what is this? And I think she's the one that reached out. And we had a conversation about this, the podcast a few episodes back, where I talk about this. And so one thing's going for me to be able to manage my relationship with people is that if I cut you off, it's kind of like gone, which kind of sucks because I'm like, I shouldn't be doing that, right? I shouldn't. But if you're not here in front of me, we're not having that. I'm just like, all right, goodbye. The second part that benefits me in that area, unfortunately, is that growing up the way I did, which was in isolation, with kind of in hiding, with a mother who really was very much emotionally unintelligent. I just kind of believe that no one cares anyway. So why would I matter to anybody else? And so with both of those double whammies, like if I practice what I preach, it's game over for you. Like it doesn't bother me. I don't think about it. I just move on. And occasionally I'll have a glimpse of it and I'm like, oh man. But then again, I'll move. So I'm not saying that the other person has to do all the work. It's like, that's something that I have to work on in my own emotional intelligence. Being able to cultivate some empathy is a big one, because you've got to be an active listener, right? A reflective listener. It means that you've got to be willing to listen to understand how someone else feels without judgment. That's not easy. I've dealt with lots of family, lots of folks, lots of situations where, maybe they've been offended or hurt by the church or by, law enforcement or by something. And, I'm fine with talking with anyone in those situations, 100%. What I'm not fine with is disrespecting the things that I hold precious, right? I mean, like, we can have a conversation, but the minute you cross the line of like trying to doom and gloom instead of like to seek conflict resolution, I know what your motivations are, and I'm not going to go there with you. I'm just not. And it sucks. My growth mindset has to be cultivated in, let me understand from your perspective what really is going on, what really hurts, what are you really disappointed about? And I'll tell you, 100% of the time, 100% of the time, it's not about the judge. It's not about the cops. It's not about the church. It's not about the president. It's not about the government. It's about you. It is 100% about you. Has nothing to do with an outside organization. It's about you. And that's a hard pill to swallow when you want to be right. Trust me, I've been there. We've all been there. You're able to communicate very effectively. So improving your communication is huge. Be able to express your emotions clearly and respectfully during difficult conversations. This is a hard one too, because you can say, like, look, I'm not here to change your thoughts, your opinions. These are my thoughts and my feelings and my opinions. Do with them what you will. But I love to get into search talk. Help me understand where you're coming from. What do you think? Help me understand why you think that. Most people struggle with this because that's when they move from feelings to thoughts. They're acting and reacting on feelings, and you can't keep describing feelings, but you can your thoughts. Now, here's the funny thing about thoughts, right? Is your thoughts can change. Mine have over time with many different things. Being able to cultivate emotional intelligence means that you're going to take responsibilities for your own actions and your own emotions. So you're going to avoid blaming others when you feel a certain way. Like, how stupid would it be if I blamed Donald Trump or if I blamed Purdue Pharma for my feelings? You did this to me. Like, how do you think Purdue Pharma gives a crap how I feel? No. So if I really got into the nuances of that, they'd probably destroy me. But I'm not going to allow that, because I'm like, look, I'm going to make it better in my world first, and then we'll see about whatever happens after that. So taking personal responsibility for your thoughts and your emotions and your actions are crucial. Then, of course, being able to understand that emotional intelligence is crucial for a lot of different reasons, right? First and foremost, you guys, it's going to improve your relationships. This is probably the most important thing. High emotional intelligence helps you understand and manage your own emotions, as well as recognizing and influencing emotions in others, because you really can be a catalyst to someone feeling empathy, love, compassion, anger, rage, destruction. You can be the mechanism of that. That's why I think, again, core purpose stuff, I don't want to get too far in the weeds. One of the main purposes we have in life here is that we're creators. And we create this kind of emotion in people. And so we got to remember that. And if you're able to kind of improve relationships, it's going to improve your communication. It's going to help you be more effectively, able to resolve conflicts and so on and so forth. It absolutely enriches your mental health, okay? Because people with high emotional intelligence generally cope better under stressful situations and during adversity. And they're more resilient and can maintain positive outlooks and contribute to a well-minded conversation. They can see both sides. They're willing to see the limitations in their own understanding. And so it will increase your mental health. And I've seen some people that get very staunch and very, rigid in a belief. And that kind of hurts too. I mean, my own beliefs, even with my own understanding of my church and my gospel that I follow, there are limitations that I have there. And I'm like, that doesn't seem right to me. So I'm going to be putting that one on a shelf and kind of figure that one out at some time, because right now that doesn't seem right to me. So I'm not a blind sheep just like following. I'm like saying, this is a little bit different, right? Things like lifestyles, things like that, like caffeine, all these things. I'm like, I get it. Increasing better decision making, right? Being able to if you make a decision, you're standing behind it. If I make a decision to do something, I'm going to do it with purpose. I tell my kids, if you're going to break the law, you better do it on purpose. I don't want you doing it by accident. If you're speeding, you better be going somewhere, and you better be willing to take the consequence, if, ands, or buts. A crash, a ticket, whatever. If you're going to break the law, you better do it on purpose, because there'll be time for you to be held accountable in one way, shape, or form. And that's a hard one too, because I don't want them breaking the law. I don't want them doing stuff like that, but they have to be, the judgment of what they're willing to do. Better decision-making with emotional intelligence makes you, a more thoughtful and informed decision maker. And that can lead to much better outcomes than just having a very rigid, closed-off mindset. I think emotional intelligent people make very effective leaders because they are more empathetic. They're better at motivating, inspiring people. They can navigate the complexities of the social dynamics of the team, of the family system, of the employees that they have, and it fosters a very positive work environment. And I think sometimes people with a high emotional intelligence get a bad rap because they think, oh, you're just pushovers. No, they're not. They are the people that built this whole place. The problem is when we get someone that's not like this and we're like, oh, but then we realize that everything comes to pass, nothing comes to stay. So just wait, it'll change, right? The increased empathy is a big one. This is why emotional intelligence is so important. Individuals with high emotional intelligence are more empathetic, which allows them to understand and share feelings with others. And this is a big deal. And it's crucial to have this principle and this part when building a relationship with others, because it builds trust and it builds rapport, and you can keep things in a progressive manner of lifestyle building. I love the fact that it helps resolve conflict. I can earnestly say that, with the exception of maybe several people that were a part of my life hundreds of years ago, that I have zero ill will for people. And that's kind of a bold thing to say, because there are people certainly that I'm not fond of. But if I were to bump into them on the street, like, I wouldn't be like, hey, mother effer, like, give them the bird. I'd be like, hey, and just maybe keep moving. But like, being able to resolve conflict and to be more adaptable when it comes to having a little bit more of a higher emotional intelligence, it can get you to manage your emotions and stay calm under pressure, guys. And that's the key, right? We want to stay calm under pressure. Think about that during times of relapse and stuff, to be calm under pressure. It definitely improves your communication, and it can help you with your personal growth. So when I look at kind of like in summary, as we wrap this thing up, emotional intelligence is so important because it comes from so many aspects of life, right? Like, it enables you to navigate the complexities of this human experience with all the human emotions and all the interactions more effectively, leading to a very, very balanced life and fulfilling, I guess, check marks that you've maybe set for yourself in a manner that you can look back at and be proud of. So I hope this wasn't too boring for you. I really wanted to talk about this because I've seen this in a few things. I've seen it myself recently. And so being able to maybe teach and coach every once in a while, I think is a beautiful thing. Listeners, thank you so much for giving me this platform and the stewardship that is the coach of Team Addict to Athlete. I don't take it lightly. If you have any questions, jump on addictoathlete.org. Reach out and send us a message if you want more information about this or other things. Consider the Patreon program. Patreon, your shirts are coming. I keep telling you that. But we're going to double this thing up because we feel really bad about being picky about the logos that we've chosen. So it's coming. And we got some neat things in store for the Patreon this year. Nonetheless, athletes, you've been well fed. I hope this has helped in one way, shape, or form. Share this with anyone that you think might be struggling. If you need to have a conversation about this and you need some help, reach out. There's a lot of people here to help, especially me. If you guys need help and assistance, that's blue at addictoathlete.org. Athletes, and keep doing so, because until next time, the best advice I can give you is to turn your mess into your message.